a letter of Paul to the Colossians. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which each indeed you are called in the one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him.
Thank you. Nice work. He's such a veteran, he gets to use the other side of the stage. Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you. I was thinking this morning, just a second ago, I know in my tenure of leading in this capacity, there's been more changes to this Sunday than any I've ever led in my whole life, which I don't know why that matters, other than just I like oversharing things. So as of a few months ago, our friend Lacey was going to be here, and she was going to join us in this series, Lacey from Compassion and on staff in a church in Billings, and she had some stuff come up, and so after the first of the year, I think it was over Christmas break, she had to cancel. And so then I was like, I'll finish up the Mere Christianity series or the Simply Put What as a Christian series, and was excited to do that. And then about a month ago, there was this decision that my friend Jim and I were going to film this video together, and there would be this announcement. We didn't do that, which would have been wild because he died yesterday. So those of you guys that know Jim Darling, we will host his service on Saturday. I'll try not to be a freak show here. But it was actually, some of you know, some of you don't, and that's not intended to leave anybody out, that there's just a couple families really suffering right now. And for the last several weeks, I've sat up here and frankly just been so proud of you all in just like what it means to be a church together. I think we grew up a lot post-COVID, and the caring of these two families is something that it just felt like you all should be commended for that, and if you're not a part of that now, your turn's coming. I guarantee it. It's just, so it's not, you're a part of this with us, whether you help support it through your giving or you're one of the people there delivering food. Thanks for being a part of that. So what hit me the last several weeks, there's been this desire to do something a little bit different. So we're in this series, Simply Put What as a Christian. Now I'm in my own head. I don't even know if it's using the right vernacular and if I'm using the sentence structure right, and I'm really in my head because my friend Jim, our friend Jim, was like the most exacting English person ever, and I'm wondering I wonder if I even worded that question correctly. By the way, his last words to his wife were, if you know Jim, he just was, scrupulously with his words. And Saturday night she said, hey, why don't you lay down? And he said, it's lie down. It's like, over my dead body are you going to misuse the English language? Literally. So we've been in this series, and if you're a guest with us, we're really what we're going to do is finish the series on Ash Wednesday. It occurred to me that even if you haven't been reading Mere Christianity, I can't think of a better way of observing Lent than just picking up the fourth book of that book. It's probably 60 or 70 pages long, and I think it captures what Lent's all about, which is this following Jesus it's a lot of hard work, and it should take your very best work, and yet we're all busy and we all have stuff, and so we program these specific seasons where we really bear down on those things. What we're going to do this morning is I want to talk a little bit about community, and here's where this comes from is, I suppose a month ago I was sitting with a person I really like, a friend, and they just said, how do I get the life that I want? And the context was kids, a marriage, a job, a house, like all the stuff that's supposed to make us happy. And you could tell this is a person who's in that late 20s, early 30s seasons of life where it's not that they're miserable, they love their spouse, they love their kids, but there was this sense of like, this isn't what it was supposed to be. And he just asked me this direct question. Now, I'm not a therapist, and I'm not actually very good in a one-on-one setting, even though I do it all the time. But in this instance, I had an opinion, and it's a strong opinion. And I just said to him, I think it's easy. I think you identify people who are what you want to be, and you become their friends. Which led to this next question of okay, so how do I do that? And we got a little ways down the road to talk about how we do that, but I realized in that, and when I left there, I went right to my computer and I realized I've had this front row seat to watching people struggle with community and build community for 25 years. I see best practices. And so next slide, the question I want to ask here that I've started asking is, what are some best practices for building friendships and community? Now, here's the caveat. Not everyone here is looking for that. And we've said from day one, we want to be a place that's safe for those of you who just need to hide right now. Not everybody who comes to church is looking for best friends. Some of you are looking for something else, whether you're healing from a past experience or you're just checking Jesus out. We've always held strongly to, we are not going to treat the room like everybody here is looking for best friends. And if you're not, then maybe there's some things that you can pull from this. But for those of you who are, and for those of you who are trying to lean into and assess and understand, how do I get that life? And if it is in fact attached to the right people, because there's all those quips about your income, your happiness, all those things will be relative to your 5 closest friends. And so what I want to do is I started this list on Evernote where I allowed myself to have lots of opinions, and before long it got too long. And so then last week I was like, I know what we got to do, because it's Super Bowl Sunday, let's lighten the mood a little bit. And I was like, Hannah, do you want to do this together? And so if you know Hannah, if you don't know Hannah, her and her husband Scott have also worked very hard on building community. Like many of you, they moved here several years ago. They started from scratch. Yes, she's on staff, so she has some advantages. She's also had a front row seat to watching just our priority for community change since 2020. So Hannah's going to come on up here. We're going to try to not bore you to tears. But I just want to explore this question, how do we do this? Because if there's anything that's been solidified for me in walking with a couple families who are suffering, it's you can get away with a lack of strong relationality. Assuming you're young and you're healthy, you can get away with it. But there's a point where you'll want it. And as Dave Ramsey says, friendships are the emergency fund of life. So here we go. You ready?
Ready.
So let's start with the first one, Donnie. Number 1, find a good church. Good churches are full of good people. You've heard me say this. This is one of my couple hopes that my kids learn from me, and that is the point at which I need good people in my life, I find a good church. I'm not suggesting there's not good people outside of churches. I'm just saying I think the saturation rate is much higher in a good church than anywhere else. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I guess I don't know a better place to start. Like you said, there are good people everywhere, but I think the best place for me, or what my experience is in church.
You get to shop friendships. It's like is it like high end or low end? Anyway, all right.
Anyway, number 2. Be a Sunday regular, if not an owner. So when I'm meeting with someone or they ask me what is the I'm here to get connected, what do I do? That's actually the number 1 thing I tell people is just show up on Sunday, show up every Sunday and be present, because I think if there's one thing COVID taught me is that your presence matters. When you don't show up, it's not just you that's affected, it's everyone else that didn't get to interact with you or see your face or have a conversation. So your presence matters every Sunday.
Yeah, what I say to people often is if someone's sitting in where you're sitting, and they look over here and they see a person or a couple who's here once a month, and they look over here and they see a person or a couple that's here most of the time, you can't blame them that they're gonna invest their relational energy in this direction. It's just, frankly, it just makes sense. So, right. Yeah. Am I 3? Oh yeah. Okay. Number 3. On Sundays, arrive early and linger after. All I mean by that is what it says is there's this huge advantage we don't have a lobby, which is really a bummer.
It is.
But there is a huge advantage. You're in the lobby. What do you see? What happens in the lobby before and after?
People still hang out. People still linger. And it kind of, when it's nice out, it spills outside onto the sidewalk, onto the front steps. So if you want to linger, you can. We're not kicking you out. And
my understanding is there's a lot of lingering that happens in that space outside Narrate Kids, too. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Lexi's very gracious. I don't think she's ever called the cops on any kids who weren't picked up.
Oh my gosh.
She's probably been close. I've got abandoned children from the 9 a.m. gathering.
Number 4, initiate. Don't assume they're too busy. Scott is really good at this. He always tells me, don't say no for people. Like, it's like the busiest people are often the ones that will make time to hang out. And so initiating is scary and it can be hard, but just do it.
Yeah. What I said to this friend that morning was, there's a multitude of people that if you ask them to dinner, if you ask them to do something, they will say yes. And the frustrating thing about this cultural moment is there aren't that many good initiators. And so quite frankly, I think if you want to build community, you just have to be relentless in being the activator of it.
It's a skill you can't learn until you just do it. And then it gets easier.
Yeah, but you can't just sit around. I mean, there's so many, probably everyone in this room, had you chose to organize a Super Bowl party and invite 30 people, you probably would have had 20 people there. But that doesn't necessarily mean you even got an invite. That's part of the trick, is you just have to be the initiator if you really want it. Am I even?
Yeah.
Reciprocate.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5.
I don't know. Yeah, number 5.
What I mean by reciprocate is just return the favor. I think a really easy approach is someone asks you to dinner and you go to dinner, someone asks you to go for a bike ride and you go for a bike ride, whatever that is. The next step is easy, like reciprocate. Be the next one to invite.
Yeah, I guess I don't have anything to add to that.
You don't have anything to add to that? Okay.
No, just,
all right.
Yeah. Number 6, count those who reciprocate as a grace but don't expect it. What does that mean?
I guess that one's mine,
You
isn't
wrote
it?
that one.
But we've talked about this.
We have.
One of the real dangers if you go looking for community is cynicism. Because if you function as the initiator long enough, you'll invariably notice that 90% of the time you're the initiator. And that can get lonely, and that can frankly, it can make you bitter. It just kind of depends on your emotional mood. So what I've had to do with my head is just adjust my thinking, and when someone does reciprocate, I just count it as grace. I can't, because if I live expecting it, then I become a curmudgeon, and I don't want to be a curmudgeon. So I just count it as like, oh yeah, that's unexpected. And frankly, that's a great signal that this person really wants friendship with you, that they reciprocated.
It's so easy to get into that mindset of, I know for me, like, well, they didn't call me, so why should I call that? And that just leads to like this downward spiral of, well, no one's called anyone and we haven't talked in a few years, I think just that, yeah, like you said, if they reciprocate, it's great, but don't expect it.
Yeah.
Be the initiator.
So the next one, number 7, say yes.
Well, that's my favorite one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Talk? No,
I
go.
can. When my husband and I moved here 8 years ago now, and we didn't know anyone. We have no family here. We knew like 2 of his coworkers. And so our mantra, well, it kind of still is yes, and what can I bring? Like when you get invited, yes, and what can I bring? Like it's just kind of fun to see how many things you can say yes to. And I can think of several things where I've kind of gone, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Backpacking, I was like, I don't know. And now it's like, I love it. It's one of the things I look forward to. So just saying yes. It didn't work for you. Just saying yes, although I did say no last week and I still feel kind of bad.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to rock climb. I can't do it. Sorry, Becca.
Well, and there's a danger of saying no, because too many no's and you just stop getting invited.
It's true.
So there's an inherent danger because none of us wants to be annoying, and so if I extend too many invites and it's just no, then I just simply stop asking. And I will say, I've learned from Hannah on this. A few weeks ago, I got a text, was it a Tuesday morning, from our friend Shannon, who was organizing some caroling to go to the Fisher's house to celebrate Christmas. And my first response was, hell no. I couldn't be less interested, and if I'm being honest. And then I looked down and Hannah was like, I'm in. And I could hear Hannah's voice, just say yes. And so I was like, I'm in. And I'm so glad that I did it, because it was so stinking fun, and good job, Shannon. That was such a great leadership thing. And I have no idea what I was going to do that night, but I know that I'll never forget caroling for the Fishers that night in the principle of say yes.
Well, and that's the thing too, if I want to say no, I ask myself, well, what else am I doing? Often it's like, what, I'm going to go water my plants, or which is great, but I could do that tomorrow.
Plants are important.
They are. I don't need the whole night to do that, though.
It might if you're wiring them. I'm just, okay.
Okay, so here's the next one. Send open-ended invite with lots of notice, something like, hey, in the next couple of months, would you want to grab dinner, then schedule it.
Is that one mine? What do you want?
I think that one's yours, but I do weeks. Sorry,
Do
you
you?
do months? Well, sometimes you have to go a month or two out.
If I'm feeling really insecure, I just say months.
Months, yeah. And then schedule it. Schedule it. Can I talk about scheduling it? Because that is important. I just really want to talk about my wall calendar system, because Scott and I have a wall calendar where we actually like sit down, every few months and just like write out everything that's coming up. And it's super helpful. And we do have our own little like Google calendars too for work and stuff, but I love the wall calendar meetings. Just write out everything and it's great.
Yeah. For me, my practice there is, it's so unintrusive to say to someone, man, it'd be great to get together. I mean, right now, so what is it? It's February 11th. My text would sound something like, man, it'd be great to get together sometime between now and the end of March. And there's some sarcasm there, but there's also some sincerity there of just, well, let's not allow busyness to be the excuse. And then the other thing for me is almost every time I have a commitment in the evening, I wake up regretting it. And then when I'm getting off work, I regret it. And when I go to bed, I'm so glad I did it. And so for me, part of that schedule is just, it's the power of routine, the power of habit of, if I commit to have dinner with you in 5 weeks, then that gets us into our next one. And it takes the emotion out of it. Which the next one, go ahead, next slide, is this: keep your commitments, don't let FOBO win out. FOBO's your thing.
Great, I know. Because I think I've seen this quite a bit of, well, I want to, but what if that comes up? Or just commit. Just commit. Write it on your calendar, and then you're all set.
And keep your commitments.
And keep your commitments, yes.
It's exhausting to prepare someone dinner and then have them tell you they're not going to make it, whether you're having 10 people or 2 people. It's just, we struggled this time to put together our Mere Christianity groups, because there was several people who were like, last time I did it, nobody ever showed. And so I think similar to similar to what we talked about earlier, I just think if you get invited and you never say yes, you're probably going to stop getting invites. And if you don't show or you're constantly canceling, then the right people, who are the ones who are good at community, are just they're going to stop inviting you. Yeah. Next slide.
Yeah. Number 10, schedule ahead 1 week minimum.
See, Jim would have edited that out because I was just redundant. So we've already really talked about this, but again, I hate this about myself. I hate this about my life. But if you said, hey, Adam, do you want to get together Monday night to meet today? Or even frankly, if you said, hey, do you want to get together this week today? Barring it being an emergency on your part, I probably can't say yes to that. Because this is the downside of that. And so I just think getting out ahead is such a huge thing. And again, for people like me who live by this lie that if I don't have X number of hours a week on my couch in my living room, I'll be tired and I'll become a puddle and I'll no longer follow Jesus. Like, right, because there's this game we play, right? Like, I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be tired. And the reality is being socially exhausted is far more energizing than your couch.
That is true. And we're both introverts.
Exactly.
So.
Which is why we like schedules.
I do like schedules. I also I think for me, scheduling lets me be a little more spontaneous too. Like if I have this plan and I happen to have a free afternoon, evening, whatever, then I can say yes to those little spontaneous things. So
yeah.
If you're going, I want to be spontaneous, I think you can.
Totally.
And a schedule helps you.
You can, yeah, because you just cancel on who you had and
no,
do the
I
stuff.
would not do that.
Next slide. Chemistry matters. It's okay to like someone but lack the affinity to be close. One of the most important one of the most important books I ever read was Joseph Meyer. I actually had him as an instructor. His book called In Search to Belong. And what he unwinds is, I think, this false narrative among Christians where fundamental to what it means to be a Christian is to love people, and fundamental what it means to love people is that we should all have the capacity to be best friends. And
that is exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, keep going, though.
Oh,
that's weird.
I probably, yeah. So to me, there's this, we've got to give ourselves permission to go, it's okay to say, I really like this person, but I don't think that we could be friends beyond a few minutes at a time. That we whether that's a season of life or there's a lot of reasons, but somehow we just have to give ourselves permission within Christ to love someone without having the desire to be their pals. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm. That's where, because I have in my brain, at one point someone told me, like, you need to want to be best friends with everyone you meet. And I thought, that sounds exhausting. I don't know if I can do that. Am I a terrible person? And I think it must have been in that book that he, correct me if I'm wrong, but he talks about like these different relational depths. Like there's intimate, personal, social, and public. And so actually healthy individuals have kind of people in all of these different spaces. Like there's the people that you're just very close to, and that's maybe one or two people, and then out from there, you know, you've got like your small group or your group of girlfriends that you do life with, and then you've got your social space, and then this wider public space. So yeah,
years ago I asked one of my mentors, Fred, I said, Fred, what do you do when people accuse you of playing favorites? And he just goes, tell them I do. So there's a tension there for sure.
Yeah. Number 12, consider pursuing people in a different age and stage.
You do a lot of this. You have a lot of friends who have kids.
I love it. Like, I love my friends or our friends that are in the same age and stage of life. It's great. And also, I love my friends with little kids. I love my friends that are empty nesters. Like, we're like really good friends with our neighbors who are like 70. Like, it's just fun.
You do make a remarkable old person.
I'm ready for my retirement age, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you like to puzzle, just call me.
One of the things actually this friend and I talked about that day was what I've observed. This is my opinion. You don't have to hold it. But I think one of the mistakes that I see played out the most is, you know, couple X has, especially for talking kids, has a couple little kids, and so then they see these other couples who have little kids and they think we should hang out. The reality is that's terrible. It's like not fun 90% of the time, right? Because now you've just squared your number of little kids in the room, and so now there's 4 of them. But I think one of the greatest gifts Teresa and I were ever given was when our friends the Wongs in the early years, they didn't have little kids at home. They were in this different season of life, and so they were amused by our kids. So rather than just compounding the problem, it actually like we got to hang out with them and we got to hang out with adults, and they were amused by having little kids around, and it was just a perfect arrangement. And I think that for us, or even different seasons, the other thing that has really worked for us was like our friends the Fishers. Our kids were just different enough ages that they were mutually intrigued by one another. And that helped. That for me is what I mean is like sometimes it's okay for your closest friends to be 20 years older than you or just in a different season than you. Yeah.
Number 13, return messages. Ghosting sends its own message.
Do you ever have that?
Does people ghost me?
Yeah, or just not respond?
Stinks.
Yeah.
But I do my best. What do you say is like an appropriate time frame to respond to everyone? How do you do that?
Did they have an Apple Watch? I'm serious. Like, it's part of the thing. Like it's really, maybe I know I'm insecure, but it's a lot of emotional work to send a text that goes unanswered to a person that you know carries a phone in their back pocket and an iPhone on their wrist. And so I understand that I live by this principle of I'm going to return all my messages within the week, if not within the day. Some people would say that's impossible. The busiest person I know, my friend Fred, answers every email within a 24-hour period and every text within a 24-hour period. And I think he's right that the opposite of doing that, it hurts, frankly.
Yeah. I do my best to return texts in like 24 hours and then emails in a week.
Yeah. Which puts you in like the 5th percentile of our culture. So I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to build rapport with people, I think one of the real low-hanging fruits is be the kind of person who they can count on to reply to their texts, their messages.
Yep. That's good. Okay. Number 14, eat together. We all got to eat.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the Bible, but there it is.
There you go. Last Supper.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first started in youth ministry, I remember I asked Vern, because my job was to spend 20 hours a week with students. And I was like, Vern, how do I do this? Like, this is weird. I didn't grow up in youth group. And he said, everybody has to eat. Just eat with them.
With students? Oh, we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have dinner every week.
And if you're an introvert, it gives you something to hide behind.
Food.
Serious. Like, everybody has to eat. And if you go out, everybody eventually has to vacate the table. So you get to leave. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Number 15, invite people into your home. How often are you and Scott having people over?
Well, it's every week. We have high schoolers coming over.
Okay.
So weekly right now.
Yeah. I'm sorry to pound on the same drum, but this was a Fred principle, is a Fred principle too. When we were first getting started in ministry, he just said, get feet under your dinner table, Adam. Just get feet under your dinner table. And I think think about it. Like there's few things that signal to you the desire for relationship more than someone having you over. I think it's harder today, especially if you Pinterest and do all that stuff, because we all live under this false narrative that my house is dirty and everyone else's house is clean. And I think you just it's part of how you vet your friendships. Are you okay with their level of cleanliness? And are you okay with someone seeing that your life isn't perfect? I remember several years ago, we had some friends over, and they're like hyper type A people and great people. And it's kind of horrible because when you come in our front door, there's a door to our bedroom there, and it was open. Have I told you this story?
No.
And their little guy who's like 4, he looked in our room and he saw dirty clothes all over the floor, and he looked in there and he goes, "That's disgusting." There you go. That's how the rest of the world lives.
That's like...
And I'll pay for your therapy later.
Some of these Instagram accounts are out of hand. No one's house really looks like this.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have kids. There's just 2 of us. How's it a mess? I don't know.
It's probably Scott.
Definitely. All right, number 16, invite people into your plans. Example, I'm hiking next Thursday after work, want to join. I like this one too, because to me, it's so easy. Like, you're already doing stuff. You're already going to listen to music or going for a bike ride or whatever. So just invite someone to come along.
Totally. You and Scott are really, really good at that.
Well, there's only 2 of us. We get bored with each other after a while.
I think he's here at this service.
Hi, is he? Oh, yeah. Hey.
Okay, next slide. Only a few more. Sorry that you have to hear all of our opinions. Be intentional about the extent to which your family of origin is going to function as your community. We can debate the ideal, but at the very least, proceed with intention. I know that's a little wordy. That comes from me, but I love my family. I love the relationships I have with my parents and my blood relative family. I do think one of the gifts of moving to Helena and not having family here was it invited us to discover what it looks like to have family to also have family that's not blood relative. And what I see in when I just assess the life that I want, I don't want it to always be assumed that Thanksgiving is just going to be with family. I don't always want it to be assumed that my closest relationships are blood relatives. I love my blood relatives relationship. I love my parents. My mom lives in town, but we've made this decisive decision that we wanted our community to be bigger than that. Try to say it this way because I think this is one of those, if you don't sit down and figure out your values now, you might end up 20 years from now in a place you didn't want to be. So part of it is just having really intentional conversations. Are you going to be the kind of person who's always obligated to celebrate Thanksgiving with your parents? That's okay if that's so long as you arrive there out of intention. So I could talk about that one ad nauseum.
Yeah, David Brooks has this really interesting phrase called forged families, and it's just about how it's this whole article, and it's about how we kind of move farther and farther from our families of origin, and how this idea of like kinship or forged families with your friends and neighbors, and like you can choose who you want to kind of be in your family. So I always like that phrase.
Yeah.
All right, are we running out of time?
No, we're right. Go ahead, next slide.
All right, 18, be careful with youth sports, recreation, travel, etc. Left to themselves, they'll leave you without long-term community.
How would you address that one?
Well,
because you put some of the nuances in there.
Sports to go to, but I just think it's easy. Like I could zone out and just want to do like hiking by myself or doing these things like on my own, because sometimes I think maybe it's a little easier. You don't have to plan or coordinate, and that I just think is really dangerous. Like going back to the one I love is just what are you doing and invite someone with. Like, I think I've just seen people get kind of tunnel vision on what they're doing and they're going to do it, and it might be at the expense of friends or family.
I would answer this one differently today than I would have in 2019, and I think it's this. I think it's exponentially, this is just me trying to share an opinion, but I think it's exponentially more difficult to have meaningful community and meaningful connection with Christ without being a Sunday regular. I just think there's so many forces that are going to make that hard. And I have empathy for the fact that Sunday is not it's not a priority for anything else within our culture. And I have kids who play baseball, so there's a real tension there. I just think it's something. My friend Jim, who shortly after diagnosis sat down with someone I have a lot of respect for and wisdom, and was kind of processing different options and treatment and stuff like that. And I think he got this brilliant advice, and I think it could apply to a lot of things. And the advice was, the way it was told to me, Jim told it to me, was the strategy hasn't changed. Life is still about determining what are your goals and what are the things that you need to do to get to those goals. And so it's just fascinating that a guy who's dealing with a terminal diagnosis still had to kind of work through, like, what's the end game goal and how do I get there? And it's been so worshipful to watch, like, he did that. It's exactly what happened. And I think the same thing is true if you have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, or if you're empty nesters. What are your relational goals and how do you get there? And this circles back to number one. I think one of the easiest ways to get to the place of community is to become a regular in a place like this, or lots of other great churches in town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, number 19, show up when someone has a need, which I think we're seeing right now.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Our community, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I just think few things say I value you more than when you know that someone has shown up. And I think part of what I've learned in this season is like 5 texts does not equal 1 phone call. It's not even close. And so just show, and when someone has a need, man, there's just nothing I just can't think of anything you can do to communicate value to that person more. I know of one friendship in the room who during COVID, there was a family moving, and we all said, like, hell no, we can't help you move right now. It was the very beginning, and there's one person who said yes to that, and I know, like, that from that, there's a bond that is going to be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Number 20, last one. Leave room for more friendships. Don't get too comfortable and thus settle for only your existing friends. How do you see this playing out for you and Scott?
Scott's so good. You should just interviewed him, because he is really like the epitome of community, and I think it's a lot of his family of origin. They're just so good at always inviting and always including. Like, there's just always room for one more. Like, I know that's kind of Jack Oberweiser's thing too when he spoke. Yeah. I remember that. There's always room for one more. Like, you can always invite someone else. Like, so you can. Yeah, and I'm an Enneagram 9, or an Enneagram 1, not an Enneagram 6, but I'm really close to 6.
There's this, like, people move, people die, people's schedules change. Like, the relational entropy is real. And one of the things that I see happen that kind of pushes people out of the door here is you end up with this critical mass of community, and then there's this kind of, like, battening down the hatches, like, I got what I need, we're good. And then what's misunderstood is, in the course of the next 5 years, people from that circle, their schedules are going to change, they're going to move, they're going to die. And then you're left alone again. And so there is, from just a narcissistic point of view, it's like lots of other things. Like, it's just like business and lots of things, right? Like, you've constantly got to be building that circle. And it's a great way to help other people get connected, is just pull them into an existing circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully helpful. Sorry it wasn't overly exegetical or anything like that. There was intention around the verse that we had read, and also the memory verse that we have for this week, which is this, like, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others as better of yourselves. Don't look out for your own interests, but those of others. So to the extent that you're looking to form deeply in Christ and in community, if nothing else, we hope this sparks a conversation for you. We are going to give you a chance to reflect and celebrate and worship through communion. If you've never done that with us before, we'll go at a row at a time. We'll have bread and gluten-free bread over here. Thanks to the people who bake all that for us. We'll have wine and juice over here. The litmus test is, are you active in your following of Jesus? And if so, you're welcome to take it with us. We'd love for you to celebrate that. I'll pray. The band's going to come up. We'll give you a chance to sit with all this. God, thanks for community, that it just seems that it's such a vital piece of your image in us. And I don't know if this cultural moment is unique or if this is just something every culture says, but it just seems that the prevailing message is we don't need this, and that these artificial digital forms can replace it. And we recognize, Jesus, that you didn't send us a message, you didn't even, like, drop us a book, but you, like, showed up on the planet with real flesh and blood coursing through your veins. And you did it. And so we say thank you for your body broken, your blood poured out. Thanks for the hope of salvation. And Jesus, we say, come Holy Spirit. Come Holy Spirit, pour yourself into us and thus the world. Pour yourself into this bread and wine and thus into us. We love you. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Narrate Church, find us online at narratechurch.org or look us up on Facebook or Instagram.